out for my run yesterday and I came across this remarkable specimen, very unfortunately deceased. It has been run over, but this is the only venomous snake native to the UK. This is the adder. As I say, unfortunately this chap had been squashed, run over by a car, but this is a very well preserved specimen, apart from the injury sustained by the vehicle, where he's got and it is it's a male snake, a sort of puncture wound, but it's very, very supple, very, very smooth and dry, and a beautiful specimen. And you can actually see the injury here. There's an injury there, which has led to the cause of death, but otherwise, beautiful specimen, very, very supple, very soft, and in remarkable condition. I will show you some stills and show you what the fangs look like, which is something I was interested to see just now. And then what we're going to do is, because this is in such good condition, I thought I would try and preserve it as a wet specimen. Now, I've never done this before, but I'm going to attempt this for the first time, having watched a few YouTube videos, as is the way to learn things these days, but also having looked at some guides for specimen preservation. So I'm going to make up some formalin, preservative or fixative, and we're going to preserve this guy in a jar. So before I start the process of preserving this specimen in the fixative, I actually have to make the fixative itself. So what I'm going to use is formaldehyde, actually diluted to form formalin, formaldehyde gas dissolved in water. So we've got this 40% formaldehyde, which I got from the chemistry department. I'm going to mix that 1 part to 9 with distilled water, so I'm going to use a measuring cylinder to do that. And then I'm going to add some buffer, so I'm going to add some sodium phosphate as a buffer. So I'm going to make the fixative. The trouble with making the formalin, it actually has a pH of 3 to 5, so it's quite acidic, so it can remove the colours if you don't neutralise it and make it buffered. So I'm going to make the formalin, and then what I need to do is use this hypodermic needle. I'm going to actually do all this outside because the formaldehyde is carcinogenic and toxic if inhaled. So, and I'm going to use this hypodermic needle to inject the specimen, the snake, with the formalin. And it's important that you fill all the body cavities. So I'm going to work along the snake roughly every inch, injecting some of my formalin into the body cavities, and that preserves the internal organs and the tissues and means that it won't decay. Then once I've done that and I've injected the snake all the way along, I'm going to put it into my jar. Now this is the jar that I'm going to use for my wet specimen. So I'm going to fill this with the same 10% formalin, which I'm going to make by diluting the formaldehyde with water using my measuring cylinder. So I'm going to fill it with the same solution, and once I've injected the snake fully, making sure that I don't inject it with any air, and making sure that the syringe it doesn't have any air in when I inject it, so it doesn't float. I'm going to put it in the jar, and I'm going to leave it in there for about 3 to 4 weeks. Once I've done that, I'm going to take out the formalin and I'm going to replace it with the isopropyl alcohol, which is, and I'm going to rinse it a couple of times with distilled water, so it should be nice and clear, the final solution, and we should see a well-preserved specimen. So I'm going to start making the formalin now. I'm going to go outside to do that, and I will let you know how I get on. So this is the adder, Vipera berus. I just thought I would show you the sort of outside features of the snake before I start to preserve it. So you can see they're actually quite short. You can see a sort of scale here. So here's my hand. So they're not particularly long. I've measured this guy, and he's actually 50 centimetres long. The average length of adults of this species is about 60 centimetres, so they won't get a lot bigger. So people are surprised by how small it is. If I put my finger next to the head there, you can see how small. So they're actually not very long, but they are, obviously, they pack a punch. They can, cause a very severe, painful bite. Not fatal, but they can cause, quite a nasty, painful bite that needs to be treated, and can cause anaphylaxia and reactions to that bite in much the same way as a bee or wasp sting would do. So these guys feed on small mammals, small birds perhaps, Frogs maybe, although not as sort of frog specific as the grass snake. They occupy a range of habitats. This guy was found on the edge of an industrial estate where there are mixed habitats. I'm just going to open his mouth here and see, hopefully I can show you the fangs, which will inject that venom. So if I just open the mouth like so, and I can just hopefully hook my forceps behind the fangs, like so, you should, I hope, just be able to see the fangs there. So just coming over the edge of my forceps, you can see the fangs which would inject the venom. Those fangs will fold back into the roof of the mouth, so they will fold up like that when the snake is not using them. And when the snake bites, the mouth opens, the fangs flick down, and it bites and obviously injects the venom into the prey, much like a hypodermic needle. So this beautiful little male adder unfortunately met his demise under the wheels of a vehicle. But it does provide a nice opportunity for us to observe very close at hand the specimen, and I'm going to try and preserve him for posterity. So here it is. This is my first wet specimen. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. I didn't show you all the stages of the process because it was a bit fiddly, injecting the snake with the formalin. It's been in this jar now. This is isopropyl alcohol, so I took it out after about a month, rinsed in distilled water, and then transferred to this jar of isopropyl alcohol, which will retain the colours better long term, and that will last now indefinitely, 40 years potentially, as a specimen. And as I say, it's turned out well. I'm glad that I didn't get any air into the snake. I weighted it down actually with a pestle. Is it pestle, the long bit out of a pestle and mortar? Yeah, the mortar's the bowl, isn't it? I weighted it down with a ceramic pestle, which held it down, making sure that I got all the air out so that it will sit nicely in the jar, and try to adjust the position so that you could see the head well, and yeah, it's sitting quite nicely in there as a nice wet specimen. And I've sealed the lid very tightly, and that will last, as I say, indefinitely. So pretty pleased with how that turned out as my first wet specimen. I've never attempted to make one of those before. I have thought about casting specimens in resin. Had to go at that with some insects and a very small snake in Korea, but never preserved one in liquid. Incidentally, the Natural History Museum have a really nice collection of specimens, wet specimens, called the Spirit Collection, which you have to book to see. I think it's only about £10, but I recommend going to see those. I did for my 40th birthday, and great collection they've got there, from giant squid to everything, all sorts of different things, crabs and amazing creatures from long ago. Anyway, there we go. So he is a nice male adder, my first wet specimen, nice and crystal clear in the jar. One of the things you want to avoid is getting any bits floating around in the jar, and I managed to do that, to get it crystal clear. One thing that I was concerned about was the site of the injury, which you can see. So where he got squashed, which is, I don't know if you can see just there, there was a bit of tissue leakage, so there was some stuff coming out of there. So after I had him in the formalin, what I did, I got him out, rinsed with distilled water, and I noticed there was some stuff coming out, so I actually tried to seal that hole with super glue. So I did just cover the area with super glue to stop anything, bits leaking out, because I didn't want that sort of tainting the liquid inside, to keep it nice and clear. So there we go, male adder, wet specimen. So hopefully you enjoyed that. As I say, sorry that I didn't show all the detail of the actual preparation, But I described it to you, so once you've prepared the formalin, you use the hypodermic needle, inject all the way down the snake. That preserves the internal organs, and then you let it sit in there for 3 or 4 weeks. It's only quite thin, so for that to fully seep in and preserve the internal organs, and then you rinse in distilled water, transfer to isopropyl alcohol, and Robert your father's brother, as they say. So that is that.